Good morning, Mr. Quinn.
Good morning, sir.
Are you currently employed, Mr. Quinn?
No, currently retired.
Okay. Where are you retired from?
Houston Police Department.
And when did you retire?
And I think it was March 23rd, around there.
Of last year?
Last year, yes, sir, 2017.
And how long had you been on with HPD?
I'd been with the Houston Police Department for 40 years.
Where did you end your career? Where were you assigned?
To the Major Offenders Division, Career Criminal Squad.
As a sergeant in Major Offenders, could you tell us what your duties were?
I ran an undercover group. You're the Career Criminal Squad, and we would do in-depth investigations. We were able to travel to other cities if we need to. On occasion, out of state, we would handle organized crime investigations. And it would range from murders for hire. We'd do those.
Back in January of 2017, when you were involved in this investigation, who was on your squad?
I had Officer Duran was one of the undercover officers on my squad, and Ney Gutierrez, and Officer Mauro Cisneros, and Elizabeth Mihalko, and Jennifer Martinez, and Ben Stewart.
And so was the undercover work spread amongst all of you, including yourself, or were there certain people that did it more often than others?
Yes, whoever suited the role. I would do it on occasion, but more often than not, it would require somebody younger, and sometimes somebody Hispanic speaking. So you would have that, where naturally I wouldn't do any good. So whoever fit the role best, that's who we would choose.
And who was it that decided who was going to be the undercover on any different operation or in any given investigation?
Well, it would be my decision in the end, but we would kind of, talk it over and see who feels they're better suited for this role and who might want to do the role at that time.
Do you recall about the time that you first heard or were alerted about what led to this investigation for HPD back in January of 2017?
Yes, sir.
How was it that you guys initially became involved or were informed?
I was informed by the district attorney's office by Lieutenant Malden, who had received information about the murder for hire, and he requested our assistance on the undercover portion.
And do you remember about when that was? Was that
yes, sir.
Was that in February or was this in March already?
That was February 24th on a Friday.
And at that point, what information did you have to go on regarding this possible murder for hire?
Then had been approached by a city councilman, Michael Kubash, who said that...
okay, well, without going into what was said, okay, let me just ask you, the information that you had going forward, did you have a target name at that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have a complainant name, a possible victim name at that time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was there another person out there that the Harris County DA's office was attempting to locate at that time?
Yes, sir, there was.
And who was that?
A person named Zach.
A person go by the name of Zach.
Yes, sir.
And did you or anybody in your squad take any steps to make contact with Megan regarding this threat to her life?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay, what did you do?
We met with her at 6363 San Felipe and asked her, what the situation was. Did she know this person? Was she involved with this person? And there was an open assault case. I guess it was pending in court. And we informed her that he had hired somebody to kill her and told her to exercise proper precaution at that time.
And do you recall what her reaction was to this information?
Yes, it's difficult to hear, when somebody, even though you might suspect that person doesn't care for you anymore, it's very difficult to get the head around the fact that somebody wants you dead.
And what you just said, are you speaking to your experience and having done many of these types of investigations?
Yes, sir.
And have you had contact with many people who were the target of a murder for hire plot?
Yes, sir, I have.
Was she encouraged? Did HPD assist her, or was she encouraged to do anything for purposes of her own safety at that time?
Yes, she said she could relocate.
I'll rephrase, Judge. Once that meeting was complete with Megan, the first meeting with Megan where she was informed of this information, did she stay in Houston? Did she stay in the city of Houston?
No, sir. She left and went to New Jersey.
Was it Pittsburgh she went to?
Yes, sir. Pittsburgh, sorry.
Okay. And was that at your direction?
No, it was somewhere she could go with her family and be safe, and we encouraged her to go anywhere she felt she could be safe.
Do you recall whether or not HPD paid for the flight or incurred any financial costs in sending her to Pittsburgh? Do you remember?
No, sir. She had to pay her own flight. We did not pay any money for a flight.
She paid her own way home?
She did, yes, sir.
At that time, was there any discussion about when it would be safe, you thought, for her to come back?
Well, we told her to keep in touch, and we'd keep her informed of the details as they progressed, and that we were running an undercover operation, so it would be critical for her to just kind of stay out of the picture at that time. And if anything came up, anything extraordinary, to let us know, to contact us right away, and we would contact her and keep her up on the details also.
And were you aware at that time whether or not the target now was still in communication with Megan when you spoke with her?
No, I think he was trying to get in contact with her quite a bit.
Okay. Even at that time when you met with her?
Yes, sir.
So after she leaves town, does she leave town immediately the day of your conversation with her or the day after?
I think fairly shortly. I don't remember the exact time.
Was the DA's office eventually, to your knowledge, ever able to locate this person, Zach?
Yes, sir.
And the initial statement taken from Zach, was that done by you and your squad or the DA's office?
It was done by the DA's office.
And were you introduced to this person, Zach?
Yes, sir, I was.
And that would be, his real name being Montrose, correct?
Yes, sir, that's him.
At that point, what was the plan going forward, and what was going to be your squad's role in the rest of this investigation and pursuing this investigation?
Well, we would take over the undercover role, so the first thing we want to do is establish control. We want to work with an informant. We want to interview the informant, verify the facts. We want to see that the informant and the UC will kind of mesh. So we let them see if they can work out. If he thinks he'll be acceptable to that role, and he feels like he'll be believable, then when we have that complete, we kind of take control from there. We'll suggest when he contacts the suspect and what's said, and then he'll introduce the undercover. And the undercover's role really is to take control as much as he can and maintain that control.
And so was it decided by you and the rest of the group with their input as well that Officer Duran was going to be the undercover in this case?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall when the first meeting took place between Officer Duran and Zach and Motaz Aziz?
Yes, sir.
And when was that?
I believe it was the 7th.
7th of March.
Right.
Okay. And was it that on that occasion that the first phone call was made to the defendant that HPD or anybody from HPD was present for?
Yes, sir. That was the first time that the phone call was made where we would be.
And there was a meeting set up for the next day, right?
Correct.
And the meeting took place at an Olive Garden.
It did, yes, sir.
And were you present for that?
Yes, sir.
What were you doing? What was your role there?
Well, we kind of spread the squad out. We'll go in and get a position at a table, and we'll just appear as normal customers. So we'll just be in there and see what we can observe and make sure nothing goes wrong. So as security and then to observe.
Just keeping an eye on things. And
correct.
Make sure, okay. And after that meeting was through, I assume everybody got back and debriefed the situation, correct?
Yes, sir, we did.
And did you become aware, or were you told about phone calls that were placed to your undercover officer later that evening?
Yes, sir.
Now, leading into the Olive Garden meeting, did you all have any personal knowledge of a situation that involved Mac McDaniel?
No.
Okay. When Valerie's ex-husband was discussed at the Olive Garden meeting, did you all know who Mac McDaniel was?
No, sir, not at that time.
Once his name came up in the context that it obviously did you guys attempt to locate Mac McDaniel?
Yes, sir, we did.
And were you able to do that?
Yes, we were.
And do you recall what day you actually had contact with him?
That was on the 9th.
On the 9th, the following
yes,
day?
Yes, sir, following day.
And where was that contact made? That
was at the residence of his and his parents' residence at 9.5 Hackberry.
And what did you tell him about what was going on?
We told him what was happening and that his ex-wife and Leon Jacob had hired somebody and they were to kill him.
And what was his reaction to that?
Well, he was stunned, For sure, for certain.
Was he encouraged by you or any other officers to take the same course that Megan did and leave town, or what did you guys advise him to do to make sure he was safe?
Yes. First we got the two together, and we took some pictures. We took some stage pictures of the homicides and the abduction. So we made sure that he stayed out of the way after that. We didn't want anybody to see him, somebody that might alert him and say, no, he's around. He couldn't be dead. So that would endanger the undercover officer, so we have to establish that from the get-go.
So now we're all the way up to March 9th. Do you recall when Megan came back from Pittsburgh?
Yes, sir. She was back that day. I don't know exactly when she got back, but that day she was back.
And did she come back at your request?
Yes. We'd asked her for her cooperation in these pictures, so we contacted her.
So the request to have Megan come back was to help you all in your investigation by her agreeing to pose for some pictures.
Correct.
And were you present when those pictures were taken?
Yes, sir, I was.
Did you assist at all in staging the scene?
Yes, usually we'll take a series of pictures to see which appears best, which is more realistic. It may be slumped over in a car, it may be laying down. We'll take several different ones to see which looks the best in the end.
It looks the most realistic.
Yes, as realistic as possible.
Given what you knew about the defendant, Leon Jacob, at the time, did you take any special, or were you a little more sensitive to how the scene was being staged, given what you knew or thought you knew about it?
Yes, since we had heard that he's a doctor or had some kind of medical training, we knew that the blood flow would really have to look correct. So we did our best to make sure the picture looked as realistic as possible.
And you're talking about the picture involving Matt McDaniel?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And who was it that staged or helped stage Megan for the pictures that were taken of her?
I did.
And so physically, what did you do in that process?
Well, we zip-tied her hands and zip-tied her feet. And I was putting some tape around her around her mouth, trying not to get in her hair, trying to make it as easy as possible as I could on her. But you could tell that it really took an emotional toll on her. If you see the picture, the emotion just came pouring out. It's nothing that we could have planned for. I mean, you can tell a person who looks scared, but they really can't do it.
Objection, Your Honor. Non-responsive. Sustained. I'll continue, Judge. But you believe that's reflected in the pictures that were taken?
I definitely do, yes, sir.
And at that point, was the meeting already set up? And now we're talking about the March 9th, correct?
Correct.
Was the meeting already set up with Officer Duran to go to the condo that was shared by Valerie McDaniel and the defendant? Do you know?
He calls later.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, were you present when that meeting takes place at Willowick later that night? Were you present? And by present, I mean, were you in the area during that meeting?
Yes, sir. I was conducting surveillance outside.
And I assume that when you are conducting surveillance along with the rest of your squad, you all are in plain clothes in undercover vehicles, correct?
Correct.
And was there any effort, or was there any way you were keeping tabs on Officer Duran and monitoring what was happening inside of the apartment?
Right. We were trying to monitor. Sometimes we can monitor live, sometimes we can't. And, in a building like that, more likely than not, you'll lose reception.
Non-responsive. Sustained. Did any issues arise when you were trying to monitor Officer Duran as he entered the building?
Yes, sir. We lost contact.
And I think you were saying a moment ago, when it comes to buildings like that, sometimes the signal just goes.
Just goes. Yes, sir.
Were you able to reconnect or regain contact with Officer Duran any time during the time that he was inside?
No, sir.
Did any officers ever approach the residence, go up the elevator, walk down the hallway, anything like that?
No. I was comfortable with the situation. When you choose an undercover officer, you have to be comfortable that he can do the role, and you have to be comfortable for the fact that when he's in danger, when he knows he's in that kind of situation, he can handle it. He won't expect you to rush in. If it's not absolutely necessary, he'll see the mission through. So that's what we look for.
You were just trusting and hoping that he could take care of himself.
Yes, sir.
And in that respect, you all just kept your distance, is that right?
That's correct.
Nobody approached the front door, nobody went in the building, nothing like that?
No, sir.
And eventually he exited the building, and I'm assuming he met with the rest of the squad again, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
We go and debrief.
Now, at that time, was there any communication between your squad or any officers on your squad and any representatives from the DA's office?
Yes, sir. We were keeping the district attorney informed the whole time, and some of the district attorney's people on occasion are with us.
And because the DA's office was involved from the beginning, really, with the investigation, was there an assistant district attorney that was assisting you all along the way with any questions you may have, and you guys were keeping him or her informed of the situation as it progressed?
That's correct.
And who was that?
Nathan Moss.
He was another prosecutor of major offenders?
Correct, yes, sir.
And at that time, after Willowick, and before any other conversations or contact with the defendant, were arrest warrants obtained for both Leon Jacob and Valerie McDaniel?
Yes, sir. They reviewed the evidence, and we had the arrest warrants drawn up.
Okay. Now, let's take you back to the day before at Olive Garden. Based on the information you'd received from Officer Duran, because you weren't listening live to the conversation, were you?
No, sir.
Did you believe at that time that you had probable cause for the charge of solicitation?
For the basic elements, yes, sir.
For the elements of the offense, the basic elements?
Correct.
And why is it that you wouldn't stop the investigation at that point?
Well, really, we need to see an investigation fully through. When we bring charges to a district attorney and we expect a jury to hear it, we want them to be able to see that investigation from the very beginning to the end. If we can take you along with us and let you stand shoulder to shoulder in our endeavor, then you'll get a better picture.
Not responsive. You can continue.
You'll get a better picture of what's happening. You don't know us, so it's better for you to see it other than have to depend on what we're telling you. You can see it, you can interpret yourself. We have that ability now. We haven't always had that ability. So when we have it, we should use it.
I'll move on. So back to March 9th, you have obtained arrest warrants for both Valerie McDaniel and Leon Jacob. What was the plan, or what was the reason for the call placed from Officer Duran to the defendant in an attempt to get him to come to a separate location?
Well, Leon Jacob had said that he would come and inject Megan himself with an injection that would kill her, inject her into the heart. So we wanted to lure him out and arrest him away from there. We would have additional evidence if he came up with the poison or whatever concoction he was going to use, and then we could arrest him safely without the presence of the daughter. I had told the family from the get-go, the McDaniels, that we would try to do this the best of our ability, not to harm the girl, or not to make sure no harm came to the girl.
Also, question, Nancy. At least with Leon Jacob, you wanted to effect the arrest in an environment where Valerie's daughter was not present. Is that
Correct.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Did it become obvious to you as the night progressed that the defendant was unlikely to come out to the location where you were staged at?
Yes, he said that he couldn't get the stuff right now because Valerie was asleep and it was in her veterinarian's office, so it wasn't available to him, so he wouldn't come.
And was the decision made to inform the defendant that Officer Duran, under the guise of being a hitman, had already killed Megan?
Correct.
And that decision was made after it was apparent that he was not coming out?
It was.
What was the plan going forward in terms of effecting the arrest that evening?
Well, the plan was to show their reaction if we could. So we were going to inform Valerie that her husband had been killed, as had been agreed upon. It looked like he was killed in a robbery gone wrong. And we did that.
Your Honor. Question, Nancy.
So you were obviously aware of the scenario by which Mac was supposed to have been killed, and you said it yourself, a robbery gone wrong.
Yes, sir.
And the plan was to inform Valerie and the defendant of that plan during what's called a death notification, right?
It was. We could inform Valerie, but we couldn't let her know that we knew Leon was there because we wouldn't know that.
Okay.
So everything had to appear normal, had to flow normal. We had to just go in there and tell her we're delivering a death notification of her husband, and then see what her reaction was.
Question answered. And you want to get the reaction, number one, but at this point you are inside the apartment. It's an easier way to effect a safe arrest, correct?
It is.
Okay. Now, the interactions you had, and by now we've moved into the early morning hours of the 10th of March, right?
Yes, sir.
At that time, when you all came into the apartment, when you knocked on the door, do you recall who answered?
Yes, sir. Valerie answered.
And were you let inside the apartment?
Yes, sir, we were.
And was the entire interaction, not only between you and Valerie, but you and the defendant, as well as other officers, was that recorded?
It was, sir.
Was it recorded by yourself or another officer present?
It was recorded on the body cameras of the uniformed officers present that we brought up there.
And have you reviewed the recording of the events of that evening when you were inside that apartment, along with Valerie McDaniel and the defendant?
Yes, sir, I have.
And is the recording that you viewed an accurate depiction of all the events that took place during that time period?
Absolutely.
Now, I believe the audio is going to kick in a minute. Is that correct, Sergeant? Who is it that we see who are the gentlemen we see here?
That's Sergeant Pete Schneider, and that's just the building security there.
And is that you?
Correct, that's me.
Did you encounter any issues in getting in the building in regard to security at all?
Well, yeah, it is a secured access, so we had to go and approach the security. We wanted to make sure that they didn't alert anybody we were coming, so we just said that we had a notice to deliver.
When did you say the sound kicks in?
Just in a few minutes, Judge. Now we can kind of see it on the right-hand side of the screen here, but you had uniformed officers with you as well, is that right?
Correct.
I'm going to fast forward a little bit, just. Who is that ringing the doorbell there?
That's the apartment. There are people that work at the apartments, they're security personnel, desk stuff.
Do you recall about the time this was happening, Sergeant Quinn, in the morning?
It was, the early hours of the morning.
Do you know the
Probably
time?
been, maybe after, maybe 12:30 or somewhere around there.
Can you open the glass door down there too?
whether he was leaving to go call the apartment or?
Yes, I think he's trying to make contact, let him know.
What's going on?
Yes, doctor. Your ex-husband found that the subject turns out to be fatality. That's what confused. Looks like I did robbery gone wrong. Sorry to have to tell you. Have you heard from him recently?
I was with them last night.
You heard from him last night.
I was at the house last night.
Was he there?
Uh-huh.
Time was out.
I called the police.
Good. Why did you go to the police?
Because he had my daughter.
That was last night.
Up to this point, Sergeant, did you know where Leon Jacob was?
Yes, sir, we knew he was up there in another room somewhere.
At this point, is anybody searching the apartment to find him or anything like that?
No, everything has to appear normal, as it would just in a routine notification.
Oh, I saw him this morning. This morning.
Do you have anybody you can call to help you to stay with you?
Got my daughter here. I saw him this morning when I went to school because I was worried. He was supposed to drop her off. The police told him that he had to drop off her school this morning, so I went out.
When was that the last time you saw him? Did he let you know he was going anywhere and everything? Or?
No, he was all smiles and being nice in front of my daughter. That was this morning.
Did y'all have a daughter together?
Were you aware, and I assume you were at this point, that earlier the same evening they had been informed by your undercover officer that Mac had been killed?
I was, yes, sir,
And that was a matter of maybe 5 or 6 hours before this?
if that.
And where's your daughter now?
She's in bed.
No, that's here. This her?
No, her boyfriend's here.
This here? Oh, okay. Okay.
I don't want to tell him about his boss.
Yeah, you don't have to tell her anything right now. Is your boyfriend here with you? You think he can kind of be a little help to us now? You might want to let him know. I think he may need some help.
It's fine.
You didn't think your husband was going to do something else and then was going to harm you? Now your boyfriend, is he awake? You might want to let him know what's going on. I'm sorry. Just to wait till right now. Just boyfriend, your boyfriend. Sorry about that. She's going to need some help Hello? Sorry. I'm sorry, he was hoping you could help us.
Okay, the person coming up behind Valerie here, who is that?
It's Leon Jacob.
Okay, and that person in the hat right there coming out of the back hallway, do you see him here in the courtroom today?
I did, yes, sir.
Can you go ahead and identify him by something that he's wearing?
See it right over there with the light blue tie, and it looks like a gray suit, glasses.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witness identified the defendant?
Record was so.
Oh my God. It's like, might have been a robbery going on.
Holy shit.
If anybody knows anything, or
No way.
maybe weapons.
Are you okay, baby? You've been here all night.
So he sits down behind her, and you tell him that as he's sitting down that Mac has been killed. You're there to ask to see if they had any information that could help you. And what does he volunteer to you?
He gives an alibi.
We've been here all night. Did you ask him where he'd been?
No, sir.
Did you ask him whether or not he had any contact with Mac?
No, sir.
Did you ask him if he had any involvement?
No, sir.
He volunteered that information almost immediately when he sat down.
He did.
We were here all day with their daughter. We were watching movies. We haven't been out of the house all day except for she went to get some. She went to get some luggage.
So we're all pretty amicable.
And he's still talking, correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you interrupted to ask him any follow-up questions?
No,
And he is now telling you what he's done the entire day.
he is.
Sorry? What happened on this one? What, domestic problems or?
No, he just kept her overnight when he wasn't supposed to, but
I called the police because we wouldn't get her out.
No,
that was it. I never met him except for once.
what's your name?
I was Leon Jacob.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so how long have you been divorced from your husband?
Holy shit. Oh my God. I lost my father when I was young. This thing kind of right now.
If we needed you to come with us, you could look after the child.
I can't. If it's okay with her, we're not married yet, so.
Oh, okay. That's all we all known each other.
Years. We don't date about 10, 20 weeks. She used to be my mom's ex neighbor. I'm a doctor here too in town. She's a veterinarian. We've been dating about 10, 11 weeks maybe.
Well, he had you when you were your husband. Was he worried about anything?
Like I said, I met him once a long time ago. That was it. When he still lived next to my mother. Holy shit, you're right, sweetie. Okay. You okay?
All right, so I'll tell you, we'll need you to come with us, and and,
outside, I guess I'm standing.
right now, we're gonna read you your rights. Because both of you have been arrested for solicitation of capital murder.
Well, why?
Solicitation murder. Do you recommend silent?
Hey, sit down real quick. Who do you think you're talking to, okay?
Can I get some shoes on?
Yeah, you will. Hey, man, he's still talking to you. We're not going anywhere right now, okay?
Why are we being arrested?
Just put your palms together. Put your palms together.
Statement all in. I mean, probably will be used as evidence against you in your trial. You're right. Lawyer present to you anytime in this interview, and you're right to justice.
Can I call a lawyer now?
You understand your rights?
Can I call a lawyer?
Not like that.
You don't have anything, any weapons on you, right? Nothing sharp at all, nothing like that?
No, nothing. I just said why.
You have underwear on? You have what?
I just said I have no underwear on. Can I get some underwear?
Yeah, but you have nothing.
No.
Okay, let's make sure.
Do you have your attorney's number in your phone?
Yes, I do.
Where's your phone at?
It's in the bedroom.
Okay.
Step out this way for me. All I'm gonna do
Is
is,
it in the bedroom?
I can show you, sir.
Okay. Well, it's an officer of you.
Can I put some underwear?
yeah, we're gonna take care of you, okay?
Yes.
Quick, move around so we can move back real fast.
I don't know why I'm being arrested.
You just go.
Okay.
I'd like to go to the rest of the day on you, sir.
Just go ahead and vote me down in the door now.
Can I put some underwear on and some shoes? I'm not
We're not
gonna,
gonna get you, let's put that on right now.
I'm not gonna run anywhere.
Jason with you.
Okay, I mean,
Where are your shoes and underwear?
they're back there.
Okay.
I like to call
Have a seat right here.
Okay, well, we'll go get you your phone, okay?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why I'm being arrested.
Okay, well, you just started.
Solicitation there. Solicitation.
And you can't really see it on this certain images we just saw, but was Valerie at that time under arrest and handcuffed as well?
Yes, sir.
At some point, he mentioned something about his cell phone, his personal cell phone. Do you know whether or not that was ever recovered?
It was, yes, sir.
And the phone that was being used to communicate with your undercover officer, do you know if that was recovered as well?
They're referring to the burner phone? Yes, sir, it was recovered.
And was that located in the back bedroom where he was attempting to go to get his underwear and all that?
Yes, sir, it was.
How much, well, let me ask you this. At any point during that night, was Mac allowed to come and get his daughter from the condo?
Yes. I arranged it where I spoke with both parents, and I told them, we want this to be a normal transfer. I want that daughter not to be worried about anything.
Did you make efforts to make the transition of that child as smooth as possible from Valerie to Mac?
I did, yes, sir.
Okay. And what did you do to ensure that?
I talked to both parents. I asked them, please, just make a normal handoff. Don't be yelling at each other. Don't ask each other any questions. Let's just bear in mind the girl and get it done nice, get it done quick.
So despite the fact that Valerie McDaniel was under arrest at that time for solicitation of murder, capital murder, was she unhandcuffed and allowed to wake her child up and hand that child off to that child's father?
Yes, sir, so it would appear normal.
And sometime after what we see on the video, was a consent to search for the apartment signed?
Yes, sir, it was.
And you all searched the apartment for any sort of evidence in this investigation pursuant to that consent?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass it witness, Judge. Good afternoon, Sergeant Quinn.
Good afternoon.
And let me say congratulations on your retirement. It's a great feat. Just going to have some simple questions on cross-examination for you. It's been revealed that major offenders in undercover operations are a proactive squad. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct.
And so as being part of a proactive squad, you try and assess the full scenario. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You go through and you want to try and determine the actual risk.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part.
You wanted to determine the actual risk.
Correct.
And you want to try and investigate to see if there is any real danger. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So on
you guys were contacted, your office was contacted by Michael Kubosh, is that correct?
District Attorney's Office was.
The DA's office, and they got in
Yes, sir.
touch with you?
Yes, sir.
Would you mind pulling the mic just a little bit closer so it's a little
Sure.
clear? After Michael Kubosh called you, it was your opinion that they needed to get in touch with this confidential informant, Motaz Azay, or Zach. Is that correct?
Yes, Kubosh called the District Attorney's Office, yes, and it was decided to get in contact with Zach. Right.
And so on February the 23rd, you testified today that you went ahead and okayed the order to get in touch with Megan.
Well, yes, I got in touch with Megan.
And that was after just one conversation with Kubosh, you decided the proper steps was to go ahead and plan Megan to depart the state of Texas.
Well, we're trying to determine the veracity. Is there actually a murder for hire? So we interview everybody involved, and when we interviewed Megan.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So on the 23rd, I think it's 2 days after you were informed about Kubosh, you went ahead and contacted Megan. Is that correct?
Right. When you look at everything on a whole, Michael Kubosh.
And so you wanted to get in touch with Zach Motaz. Is that correct?
The District Attorney's Office got in touch with Zach, yes.
But it took 2 weeks to get in touch with Zach. Is that correct?
No, it took them, it looks a little longer than it is because February is a shorter month if you look at it, but it didn't take them that long.
It took about a week and a half then.
Right, somewhere
It
there.
took more than 10 days.
Well, you look at the dates, but it took as long as it took to find him. They had to locate him.
It took longer.
You're stepping on him.
I do apologize, Your Honor. So it did take more than a week then. You had trouble locating him at first.
Yes.
And Zach never voluntarily came forward to you guys. Or anybody.
No.
And at the time of first meeting with Zach, you had no knowledge whether or not he was taking any money or anything about him, did you?
The District Attorney's Office interviewed him first, yes.
And they made a report that they then sent to you?
Yes.
So your office never really contacted Zach until it was time to set up this investigation?
No, we had a pre-interview with him after the District Attorney's Office contacted him. We met with them and him also to determine the validity of his statement.
Was there a report made for that statement?
The District Attorney's Office made a report of the statement interview that they did, yes.
But you said that you did a report, or you had a statement made with him.
No,
after
no.
the years.
We met with him. We interviewed him.
But there was no report made about that interview.
No.
Now, you also said something interesting earlier today, in that you refer to the suspects, if you will, as targets. You don't refer to them as suspects, but you find them as targets. Is that correct?
No, suspect.
You do suspect.
We use suspect, yes.
On direct examination, you constantly kept referring to them as targets.
I don't believe so.
So you said it's your goal to verify the veracity before starting the investigation. You want to make sure that these things are true before you start the actual investigation. That's fair?
That's fair.
And yet you contacted Megan before verifying with Zach or any person else involved with these statements. You heard from Kubosh and went straight to Megan.
Yes, when a bondsman with that level of experience and he's a city councilman tells you that,
Objection non-responsive. It's yes or no?
Just try to answer directly.
yes,
So you quickly contacted Megan, didn't verify the veracity, and told her that someone may be trying to kill her.
well, I beg to differ.
Is that-
I say we did verify the veracity to our satisfaction, yes.
With one witness, Michael Kubosh, whose statement does not reveal that.
Yes, he said he believed that he was out to harm Megan and kill Megan. That's my understanding, yes.
Did you review the statement that was made from him to the ADA's office?
No, sir.
You did not.
No, just what's in
Well,
the
not today, I'm
report.
talking about in general, before this
Okay.
investigation started. And your officers that work with major offenders made a report in this case, did they not?
Yes, sir.
And would you be surprised to realize that Michael Kubash, when asked the question of whether or not he felt Leon wanted to kill her or get her out of Pittsburgh, he could not answer that question.
Well, he,
Object, I think it's a misstatement of the evidence.
It's a violation of the rule.
Would you be surprised to find out that in his statement reported to your office, when asked whether or not Michael Kubash felt Leon Jacob wanted her taken care of to mean getting out of town to Pittsburgh or killed, he could not verify that he thought she wanted him killed?
that would surprise me, yes.
So, without being able to verify the veracity, you wanted to go ahead and alert Megan that somebody may want her out to be killed, to put that kind of panic and fear in her.
Certainly, if we,
Compound question.
Sustained.
to our satisfaction.
Letting you
Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
break that question up.
Yes, Your Honor. So without verifying the veracity of these allegations, you wanted to go ahead and alert Megan that someone may be trying to kill her.
I felt there was certainly justification to do that, yes.
You wanted to go ahead and put that fear and shock into her.
I wanted to alert her. Sorry.
If he stands up,
Yes, sir.
sustain it.
And it was at that point you guys decided it was time to go ahead and further evaluate this and get the undercover Officer Durant involved. Is that correct?
Correct.
So from that point on, you guys were going to go ahead and try and set up an attempted murder.
I don't know what you're saying.
You went into the Olive Garden with the guise of going in forward to get this target, this suspect, to try and admit to wanting somebody dead. Is that correct?
No, sir, we went in to meet with him to see what his intentions were.
And upon hearing various times that he wanted her to go to Pittsburgh, you guys did not take that as what he wanted.
No, that's obviously that's not what he wanted.
Would you be surprised to realize that throughout the course of the Olive Garden tape, well, you reviewed the Olive Garden tape, have you not?
Correct.
So when Officer Durant is stating, "I understand you want no one hurt," that means nothing? Or is that him trying to force it?
Well, when he says his life's a lot more important than hers, he's just an uneducated middle-class person from Pittsburgh.
I'm going to have to
and
stop
wants
you.
to.
Can I come take a look at what you're reading real fast?
Sure.
May I approach, Your Honor?
I don't think it's necessary. Just ask the question again, please.
When Officer Durant said, "I understand that you prefer no one get hurt," it's your opinion that that meant nothing.
When he offered to come give her an injection to stop her heart.
That's not answering his question.
Sorry.
He wants to know if that statement did not have any meaning to you or was believable, I guess. Is that really what you're asking?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, no, we look at the whole entirety of the conversation.
You also testified today that after you reached out to Megan, Leon was still communicating with her. Is that correct?
Attempting to, I think.
Attempting to. Were those communications in any way threatening? Are you aware if they are threatening?
No, I was not aware if they were threatening.
You were aware that Leon and Megan did have a relationship prior to their breakup for this point?
Correct. Sure.
That they were in love
Yes.
and that there was a lot of emotions involved?
Well, certainly.
Now, I want to go to the night, I think it was the 9th, I believe, of the death notice.
Correct.
How many officers were on scene that night?
Let's see, there were 2 uniformed officers, myself, Sergeant Snyder, I saw Officer Cisneros, and Liz Mahalco was in there. So as far as I recall, maybe that was the only people on the video, officers maybe?
So there's about 5 or 6 officers, I believe.
Around there, yes.
Is that common for a death notice?
Well, I think in this case it was certainly warranted, yes.
So it's not common for a death notice then to have 6 officers there?
No, but it was necessary on this one.
Right, but it's not common, understand?
Probably not.
And you went forward to try and say, sorry, scratch that. In your experience as a police officer, is it common for people to become anxious around officers?
When you're there to inform them that something happened to a loved one, would they be anxious? Is that?
In general, like you pull somebody over for a traffic ticket or you stop them on the sidewalk, are they not anxious or nervous?
I think it depends how you handle the situation. You can make people feel at ease, and I think in that situation, they were obviously at ease.
And then you further went into that, to give that death notice. You informed them Mac had been killed. You informed them how. And then you asked if they had any info. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you were shocked, and I think you referred to it as an alibi, when Leon said, no, we've been here all night. Could that not be interpreted as him offering, no, we have no information, this is why we have no information?
Well, it's on the tape, and people can see it and interpret it the way they want to. I'm just telling you how I interpret it from my experience.
Right, and you can understand how that could be interpreted differently.
I don't, but I can. No, I don't. But that's up to the individual.
On that same night of the 9th, did you ever have a conversation with Valerie?
Yes, sir.
And did you record that conversation?
Yes, we did.
And throughout that conversation, did you ask her questions? Did you ask her the question, what she wanted to have happen to Mac?
I would have to see the transcript. Or
During your talk with Valerie on that night, did you ask her the question what she wanted to have happen to Mac McDaniel?
yes, we interviewed her at length.
And did she go forward to tell you that, I guess I wanted Mac McDaniel dead?
Yes,
And you asked her, was that the agreement made, that you wanted Mac McDaniel dead?
probably.
Valerie did admit that she wanted her ex-husband dead.
Yes, she did.
During Valerie's statement to you, did you ask her what Leon's plan was for Megan? And what...
Let's rephrase.
Yes, Your Honor. Did Valerie tell you that Leon was trying to get Megan to go back to Pittsburgh?
Yes, she said no. The idea originally was to get her back to Pittsburgh. The idea was to go back to Pittsburgh.
And you mentioned a while ago about the watches as well. Does Valerie reveal that those watches were in fact hers?
Yes, and she gave them to Leon.
And Valerie was arrested that night as well, was she not?
She was.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you for the judge.
Your excuse or recall.
Thank you very much.